Truth has to be told. And the most important thing is to make sure the right people are in the room. At least that's what I know from this country.
Right.
When it comes to doing business.
Right.
I know how that was looking, unpleasant. I remember my president asking, how can we be at the bottom of that list on doing business? And we managed
to move up. Not once, so many times.
Just so many times.
Right.
So we expect that by December we'll have a report.
What are you seeing so far, if we can't wait for until December? What's been your biggest headache? Something that's given you sleepless nights as you carry out this duty? If you're hearing this voice for the first time, seeing me for the first time, thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you. And as always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm joined by the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Monique Nsanzabaganwa. She's joining us to shed some light on some of the key issues that are coming out of this particular forum, but also we'll expand this conversation further to look at Agenda 2063. We'll talk about the institutional reforms at the African Union and much more. So welcome to the program. Dr. Monique, thank you for making time and for gracing this particular podcast. You made a very powerful speech during the plenary, the opening of the Biashara Africa Forum. You spoke about, and actually did very passionately, about the role of private sector. Talked about everything we do towards achieving what we want as a region is hinged heavily on the role of the private sector. But I want to first take some steps back, and I want to hear your thoughts on what you are hearing from this particular forum so far. What are you hearing?
Interesting. I'm hearing hope that we are making progress, which FCFTA has actually proven to be. Just the session ended. We had two stories. One very successful, the other one with a bit of, challenges, non-tariff barriers we have to deal with. So as much as we are making progress, we still also have to do a lot, especially on the ecosystem. Because it's not just ministers of trade and the private sector in that line. It's the whole ecosystem, the whole of the country, the whole of the region, the whole of the continent. So coming together collaboratively and see in each sector what we need to fix in our area so that FCFT is a resounding success. So that's what I'm hearing. And it's like really good progress, but let's also deal with these other things that are still standing in our way. Right.
Can we talk a bit about those things that are still standing on the way? One of them, which you also mentioned in your speech, was the need to actually put in infrastructure. And that is very, very, very essential to be able to ensure that there's a lot of progress in that end. Talk to me a bit about what forums like this are aimed at achieving, so that person who seated back and says, yet another talking shop, will talk about the same things and then go back home and nothing, to go home with. How can we ensure that this forum is not a wasted opportunity or a missed opportunity?
This forum, like many others, are important. Truth has to be told. And the most important thing is to make sure the right people are in the room. And that's why we appreciate people like you in the media, because you can even make it reach whoever is not in the room. Like today, I would wish to have seen, for instance, many regulators be also in the room and partake in the conversation, so that businesses are not talking to themselves. And they are talking to the leaders, they are talking to the regulators who have to fix those very, very issues. So there are, we need to take from these conversations, learn what has to go back and be fixed, give ourselves a homework, and then have a framework of reporting in the next Biashara, actually, so that we keep monitoring and celebrating achievements while we also continue fixing things that need to be fixed.
Right. And that reminds me of the roles that you've played even before taking up the responsibilities you have at the African Union Commission. You've served as a deputy head of a regulatory body of financial institutions, and they've come in, or they've been mentioned as part of the challenges that some of the private sector players within the business ecosystem are facing. And we're talking about access to finance, and not just access, but affordable finance. In this debate of either to overhaul the multilateral financial systems or to just work on them or polish them, where do you stand on this debate?
I believe in being pragmatic. There are things you can't just overhaul because the legacy, the sunk cost, people hold on too much on them. We need to do gradual progress.
Yeah.
But also in some areas where we have opportunities, and these opportunities can also be there, we can also disrupt and leapfrog. Like, for instance, we are talking of value chains. And these value chains, for me, is a solution.
Yeah.
Like when you have an aggregator who is now giving hope to many, many SMEs, handcraft companies, cooperatives that are doing stuff, who don't even think what it looks like another country which is not Rwanda, for instance.
Yeah.
Having an opportunity to come together through a platform of sorts and then supporting each other. Financial inclusion will come through that because you have de-risked each of those individuals who otherwise could not actually be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to be doing as we continue also advocating for some basic reforms to this financial structure internationally and also in our own homes.
Right.
Yes.
We'll talk a bit about that, but let me come back to something that you also mentioned in your speech. Is what is already happening and what should be done. We're talking about 48 countries, having ratified the CFTA, but we still have those who are still, lagging behind. They have not yet been so committal to this. And maybe the Afro-pessimists are out there saying, this thing will not work. We still have those who have fears, they're holding back, saying, no, this will take away this from us and all that. Talk to those who are Afro-pessimists. What will be needed for them to be able to change their stance, to strongly believe in the potential of this ACFTA? We're talking about a huge market potential. GDP combined, that is really huge. But we need to move beyond the aspiration of how it looks like or what it could be to actually making it a reality. What would be required?
What is required, and by the way, those who have not yet ratified are not Afro-pessimists, at least from what I know and what you see from the floor. But they may be facing internal challenges. The political economy in some jurisdictions can just be complicated. Maybe interferences of political processes that are happening. So what is needed is to keep engaging them. That's why you have the champion who is doing a great job. That's why the number of those who, for instance, have uptaken this guided initiative have increased, now at almost close to 40. And as we keep going, and also private sector putting pressure on governments that they want to be part of this train that is taking the continent to the next level. So we hope that we are going to get there. We need just to keep engaging and keep offering technical support to address whatever challenges they are facing. They may be legal, they may be otherwise. We just need to keep the conversation going. Right.
I like the fact that you say private sector need to put some pressure on their governments to try and make sure that this is also working for them. The CFTA itself, how do we ensure, make a case to it or for it, for the private sector who have felt maybe this is just a government-led initiative. We are only being called to the table, when it's already been packaged, and we were not part of it when the whole process of cooking it was being done. How do you make a case to a private sector person who has this kind of feeling?
I think there will be their peers, private sector businesses who are already participating, will be making more better job than us can go and speak to these private sector people in a language which sometimes we don't even have. So we need to keep the partnership between the private sector and the governments, so that also the private sector that have experienced and can testify the beauty of these instruments. We need also to keep really sharpening the narrative with the data. Data is very, very important. Documenting change is very important. Documenting testimonials is very important. And the tool of digital will help us also to get across. But there is no better teacher than their peers who are already in it and are experiencing and can testify to the beauty of this instrument.
Right. Before I let you go, there's one, I would say, very strong pillar of the African Union. That's Agenda 2063. You've been passionate about it also as a person, and it's very important to try and make an assessment. Agenda 2063, some of us, I don't know how God will bless us with more life to be able to be there, to witness that 2063. There are those who are asking, what about agenda now? Where are we now towards achieving Agenda 2063? What can be done from an AUC perspective to ensure that, we are seeing better planning, better positioning of African countries in equal measure to fully enjoy the fruits of this agenda?
Yeah, Anangwe, when we started Agenda 2020, let's say Vision 2020,
yes.
Vision 2020, some of us felt
we
maybe we won't be there when but you don't know, time flies.
Yeah.
You might not be there in 2063, or I might not. But that's why we have like decades. Every 10 years, we have a second 10-year implementation plan now, which is trying to give it in more, reachable moonshots, in our lifetime, if God is willing. So the first 10 years have been the 10 years of convergence, of really making sure that everyone aligns to this agenda. Everyone knows that we have a vision and tries to really take it. And we have flagships projects, including FCFTA, by the way.
Yeah.
So the balance sheet after the 10 years was mixed.
Yeah.
For some who had made good progress, like on FCFTA, like on gender and others, but for some others, really, we had issues, which were even complicated by COVID.
Yeah.
So from the convergence, now you want to accelerate. So you catch up on some of the time that was lost.
Yeah.
So we have a report for the first 10 years, which was adopted by the Assembly in February this year. And we have also a report for the next 10 years plan, which has also been adopted in February this year by the Assembly. And we are now working at correcting some of the gaps. One was domestication.
Yes.
That each of the member states really takes this agenda like they are taking SDGs, because they are aligned. Yeah. We have even a collaboration with the UN to align and collaborate on the two agendas in one framework, including on planning and reporting, so that we can support our member states together, because these are the same people we are talking about.
Correct.
And SDGs and Agenda 2063 are not different. Domestication is one, financing is another one. We figured out that actually we didn't do a good job on mobilizing, especially domestic resource mobilization, to push this issue of involving private sector and the other communities. Issue of capacity. We found that there were breakdown from when you go into the technical ministries, for instance, take agriculture, take trade, take infrastructure. There is a breakdown. They don't even know that this agenda existed. Right. So those are some of the things that we want to correct in the second plan, as we also emphasize on the monitoring and on the reporting, which was also not very robust. Yeah. We will be doing by every 2 years a report of our progress. We want many countries to participate in that reporting. The first 10-year, it was only like 30-something countries who were reporting. We want everyone to be reporting this time around.
Right. And what would be required if we were to weigh the options and look at either carrot or stick? What would be required to ensure that there's proper domestication, there's proper following through? Because I know each and every African country has its own unique challenges and own unique priorities. Some leaders come and they have an agenda of unifying, and others come and they have an agenda that is totally different. What should be done to ensure that there is proper consistency in following through some of these big ambitions of the region?
Yeah, in a multilateral setting like the African Union, of course, countries are sovereign, and they are the ones implementing.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who have a jurisdiction and mandate to do things. What we can do is continue supporting them. We want to get closer to them as much as we can through the AUDA, NEPAD, working with the Ministries of Finance and Ministries of Planning. We want to keep putting tools in place, including how to measure statistics and templates. We want to synchronize and have one reporting system so that we don't double the work for them. So they have been trying to report for SDGs. They shouldn't be having another parallel reporting mechanism for the agenda. So we want actually to make it easier for them to come on board. But also we want some sort of stick as well to be exercised through the peer pressures, through transparency, making sure and celebrating those who are making progress. And
you're giving it a very diplomatic name.
Indirectly, trying.
Should it be naming and shaming?
No, how do you name and shame a country? But we will be transparent about that, and then and it has worked. We have seen it work for CADEP, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah, on this agriculture plan of the continent, it's happening. It's when you actually put data, some serious structures, leadership, they take counsel from that information. At least that's what I know from this country.
Right.
When it comes to doing business, I know how data that was looking, unpresent. I remember my president asking, "How can we be at the bottom of that list on doing business?" And we managed
to move up. Not once, many times.
Just so many times.
Right,
we made a huge leap
just
because of that transparency in the reporting. So it's important. Evidence is important.
Very key. Before I want to ask you this because it's very passionate, very deep in your heart, the issue of women and youth. You've really spearheaded and you've been a champion on financial inclusion and economic empowerment for this age group. I want you to just talk to me a bit about how women and young people within the Wi-Fi 2030 can be able to expand the reach, the coverage, to be able to impact more women and youth, because there's that aspect of, hey, we need all of us on board. We cannot leave anyone behind. What's happening from an AUC perspective on this? Actually,
you may know that we are now in the decade for women, financial and economic inclusion, which will run from 2020 to 2030. So we are only a few years remaining. And we must also respect the commitment we have to the youth, to include them, to create opportunities. And this is just by mere logic, because youth and women as a demographics, they represent actually a majority, way far from a majority of our continent. That's why, for instance, for FCFTA, we have a whole protocol for including them in trade as we speak. So the Women and Youth Financial and Economic Inclusion Wi-Fi initiative seeks actually to see how we can collaborate around that. As African Union, we have the convening power. We have the power to broker collaborations, to broker partnerships, to monitor, and to put in the open what is happening and who is doing what, including private sector and financial institutions. So we want actually to make sure that as we do whatever we do, we must mind inclusivity. And we must not just do like lip service. We have to show what has been the impact we are talking about.
Yeah.
So that framework, that initiative, just is to make sure that we have tangible things. For instance, as we speak, we are visiting some borders in the 5 regions of our continent to sample what do these women and youth actually live on a daily basis when it comes to trading across borders. So we expect that by December we'll have a report.
What are you seeing so far? If we can't wait for until December, what are you seeing so far?
No, we are having them to tell the stories because all that we know is what we hear here. But most of the people don't even have the agency to tell their own story, and they don't even have any information about the FCFTA. They need to hear it for the first time. But they have been in the field, they have been in the business, they have been trying to do things, maybe struggling. So we need to know what are the bottlenecks they are living, so that with the facts on the ground, we deal with the people who are in their ecosystem who have to fix these things for them. And then next year we can go back and check whether it has been
fixed or not.
So that is the whole concept of saying it's enough of saying and writing reports and putting policies. We need now facts. We need evidence, and this evidence spoken to by the very people actually whom we claim that we are supporting.
But Dr. Monique, there are those who say, I mean, we are tired of being asked these same questions. We filled those questionnaires. They know what we need. I've had here on this same platform some who have said they know what we need, but the challenge is it is not being done. I know you understand the biggest challenge of women and youth is access to finance for their businesses. This is something that does not need going for a questionnaire. Maybe what would you be able to say is being done or has been done to give them hope and faith that, you know, there's not just lip service. It's actually something that can be done and you'll be able to get your problem solved once and for all.
Actually, that fatigue is real. And can even be real and annoying when it's many people coming at the same time. And you find in their report or in the headlines, like I'm speaking to you now, you know, very nice, rosy things. But what we need is, in addition to knowing what is happening, can we come up with an action plan there and then? And then they are in the governance structure of ensuring that actually that action plan is being implemented. And they can hold the people in their ecosystem accountable if things have not been fixed. And we will be using this framework to monitor and actually track progress. I think that is what is maybe different in this concept of Wi-Fi. I keep insisting on transparency and accountability because if we don't, then we'll just go out there, claim, and sometimes you get even awards for things when you scratch the surface. You may not necessarily see, or you may be reporting double. Because you duplicating. I've been working here and then I left and then someone came, started working with the same community and they will be claiming the same results. You know, we need really proper accountability. And including the accountability of the financial institutions that are already doing a lot of job. But we don't have them visible because we don't have a system of actually showing how much effort is being put in including women and youth in finance and in economy.
I can already hear you talk about the institutional reforms at the African Union, which you actually are at the forefront in terms of leading as Deputy Chairperson of the AUC. What's been your biggest headache, something that has given you sleepless nights as you carry out this duty?
My biggest headache has been really the challenges of multilateralism. It's a game of negotiations, conflicting objectives or interests, bilateral interests most likely chipping in and compromising a big picture. So that has been really the challenge. Another challenge has been that everything you need to do to reform requires investment and requires money. So when you talk about money, financing, then you're the enemy of everyone because no one wants to dip in their pocket to increase their contribution. So it has been a challenge. We have a 0.2 levy decision that was taken here in Kigali in 2016, which we are struggling to take off the ground. 17 countries, including Rwanda and many others, have adopted it and even ratified and started implementing, which is doing great. But we have 2 regions. No country actually has uptaken this instrument. So those have been the challenges. The challenges of human capital, because the reform also speaks to filling the structures with people. I'm so happy that we could recruit more than 22 directors for the African Union Commission alone, because when we started this journey, only 4 directors were in place, and every other position was vacant for many, many reasons. So, however much we have done that progress, we are still behind on a number of areas just because of the challenges. Some genuine, especially the financing aspect of it. But anyway, it's what is, I should even have started by, is to say that it is maybe not, I don't know how many reforms had been attempted, and they were just shelved because it was too complicated and too difficult. But at least now we are trying.
You're moving.
At least we have implemented. At least we have now a new commission, of which I'm a member now, which is a result of that reform. At least we have structures, we have agencies like FCFTA that are really implementing the dream of the Agenda 2063. It's going to be a long haul, like any other reform. But we still have some way to go. We still have the division of labor to work. How do we make sure that we don't duplicate continental regs in the regional settings and member states? We still have a lot of work to do to rationalize our structures. But all of that is on the table. Now we have a new champion, His Excellency President Ruto, who took over from President Kagame, to keep reading this painful journey. And I hope that the journey will stay on.
Right. You come from a country that is a reformist country. I mean, rising from the ashes of the tragedy and the dark space of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis, and having a leader who believes in actions than words, or just lip service. How has that helped you in implementing this duty that you say it's painful journey? That
journey, that it's like a whole learning process, has taught me that I have to be persistent. That for reform to work, you need strong leadership, because reform is painful. And no one wants to be shaken out of their comfort zones. And that vision of purpose, that's what we need. And we need it at all levels, not just the heads of state. We need it at the levels of ministers. We need it at the levels of ambassadors, whom actually are on constant basis interacting with these reforms we are talking about. So we still have to really strengthen this leadership on the continent. I don't see any other way out, because, as I said in my speech this morning, so if we stand divided, Africa will be just on the table as a menu.
Right. I want to ask you a last question, especially on the digital payment systems, because if we're talking about trading, we need to open up. And the world is becoming a global village, and there are institutions that are supporting in this. Just talk to me about how this can be done to fully make the continent more competitive. What are the gaps, and how can they be filled, even in conversations from forums like this one?
Africa, by the way, like globally, like some couple of weeks back, the world adopted this digital compact, because these digital gaps, digital divide is not just unique to Africa.
Yeah.
But in Africa, our challenges in most of the cases are more amplified. Challenges of connectivity. We need to work on it. Challenges of skills. Challenges such as even access to the gadgets, which also speaks to the inclusion. How can you make it accessible, affordable, reliable, and safe, especially for our youth? We need to work smart. We need digital infrastructure.
Yeah.
That can also be regional, like we are talking now of the FCFTA hub, so that we can have the interconnectivity and interoperability of our systems, so that it's more efficient, on time, on cost, and cuts down the corruption and the other inefficiencies. We still have to invest in those, and we still have to invest in also protecting our data. Data is now the new mining site. And as we digitalize, if we are not careful, we'll be just producing data like we'll be producing any other commodities, and export them raw to some other people who are going to take advantage of it. So that is also something that we need to work on, including actually having our domain as .Africa. That's something that we need to keep in mind. It might take time, but those are some of the priorities we have to focus on.
Right. Africa CDC is not happy with one statement from one perceived superpower country about your amazing country, Rwanda, which we all have lived in for some time. And that is, it has to do with the ongoing Marburg virus outbreak, with travel advisories and all that. The US is going for an election, but I've not seen any directive from the African Union telling its members, hey, don't travel to the US, because we've always seen some of these things. Where do you stand in this debate? What do you feel with these travel advisories? How do we deal with them, even from a continental perspective?
Sometimes actually most of the time, you may not be in a position to dictate to a sovereign country to say whatever they have to say, the way they feel it, and they are protecting their own interest. What I like to say is we should learn from that. How can we also be knowing what are our interests and be ready to defend them with one voice? Because if we don't, then we'll be at the mercy of the others. However, our coming together is now becoming a more and more voice that can no longer be ignored. We are now at the G20. We are consulted on many grounds, but we might be also mindful of that may not just come like presenting to us on a silver plate. Maybe it is still for other reasons that we are being given the platform. So it's up to us to know what we want and assert ourselves and challenge. We've challenged some of the things, and we have seen some decisions being taken, including at the UN Security Council, some decisions taken. Like I would say partial progress, like on the financing of peace support operations. So we will just keep challenging, keep being there. It is our chairperson the other day who was saying that we have to be at the train station at least. Whether you will be in the train, that's another story. But if train comes and you're not there,
it will leave you.
You won't be there. It will leave you anyway. So we better be ready. And then we fight to get also on the train, but we must be at the train station. I like that analogy, which speaks a reality of us in Africa. And I just pray every day that as Africans, we realize that we are a powerhouse of solutions for the world. And the world knows. And that's where, like in this struggle and this fight, we have to know our place. And we have to come together, stick together, even hide behind the collective voice so that we can protect ourselves, because individually we are too tiny and we are going just to be swallowed in this area of competition and competing interests, and we are also multilateralism is failing. We are not shying away from saying it.
Right. In closing, when history books are written and they are saying, we want to dedicate a page for Dr. Monique Nsanzabaganwa as the Vice Chairperson of the African Union Commission, what legacy do you want them to write in that page about you in this role that you've served or you continue to serve?
Wow. Anyway, one, really that of resilience on implementing difficult reforms. That one, that's me. Really, I'm persistent. It can be tough, can be difficult, but I don't give up because I know we don't have any other choice. Then another one can be really being there for women and youth and financial and economic inclusion, because that is my personal calling and my area of expertise. I believe that I will have supported several entities of the union that are having that as a mandate, even beyond my call of duty as a DCP who is in charge of administration and finance.
Right. Thank you so much. I think if we had more time, I know Olive is cringing, saying we need to leave. But thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's quite an honor always having you on the show. Thank you so much. I hope we'll be able to get another opportunity to talk to you. Murakoze Chai. There you have it. Thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. Please follow our platforms at EAMG TV. We'll be happy to hear your feedback on some of the conversations that we keep driving right here for the region, for this particular continent that we love so much. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Thank you for being part of the show. Goodbye.